From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. And I'm feeling just a little bit perplexed these days. The headlines lately have been, I don't know, is it just me? Or do they seem a little smaller, a little less important? Do we kind of miss things? It's summer, our thoughts are elsewhere, we want to relax. We've come through I don't have to tell you what the last year plus has been with Black Lives Matter and the protests and COVID and the election, of course. Those three big stories that dominated 2020. And the news itself just sort of dominated our lives. Now, obviously, I'm not speaking for everyone here. Everybody has a different focus. But for those of us who are kind of daily, intimately involved with keeping up on the news, it seems smaller. It's not life and death. Every single day we wake up and sort of either dread going to our phones or with great anticipation go to our phones like, what happened? You just start clicking right away. What do I need to know? So there are a couple different ways you can look at that. I guess it's good news, right? We're not obsessed. We're not suffering from, Trump derangement syndrome? Is that what they called it? There were a couple of psychological terms they were tossing around. The deplorables used it as a way to, quote-unquote, own the libs. But liberals also used it as almost a diagnosis. Like, see what kind of harm this guy is doing to the nation? He's damaging our mental health. So that's gone. We got the conviction of Derek Chauvin for the murder of George Floyd. So we got that conviction. Are we dancing in the streets happy? No. Big sigh of relief? Yeah, kind of. I'm not sure how we all took that. It was more of a, Jesus, thank God, at least we got that. And now COVID. People acting like it's over. And some of us struggling with two conflicting feelings here. One, let's just join in the good feeling and be grateful for the vaccines. I myself am fully vaccinated, and I feel pretty good about that. And I have traveled, and I've seen family, and I've actually hugged people, and, so yeah, that's good. But come on. Here's the second feeling of the two conflicting feelings. This is not over by a long shot. Yes, deaths are down to practically nothing. At some point, it's just a virus that we live with, meaning, yes, it's never fully eradicated. It comes back year after year. We have to get vaccinated. We have to be generally safe, but we live life, quote unquote, normally, which is a word, if I could strike from every person's lips, I would strike it. Let's not use the word normal ever again, because everybody has a different idea of what normal is. And even worse, if you take normal to mean how it used to be, well, you and I have had this discussion many times. Going back to how it used to be is the very last thing that I want to do, because we just made so many mistakes. The great inequity, the way we treated essential workers who, back in so-called normal times, of course, we didn't use that expression. That word was born of the virus. But the way we treated essential workers before the pandemic was lousy. They were the least respected, least paid, least honored people in all of society. I mean, think about it. Caregivers, the lower rung folks of the healthcare industry, people who grow and process our food and make sure it's distributed to us, guys climbing up on the power lines, making sure the lights are on. Not a fraction of the respect they deserved all along. But back to my point here. The headlines and our own internal sort of feeling about the world itself and the way we approach the news. It's all in the past. It's over. The pandemic is over. Nobody's talking about Black Lives Matter. We got the conviction of Chauvin. We got rid of the Orange Menace. He was defeated in the election. And yet, I'm sorry, I just can't let it lie. I can't let it be. I wish I could, but I can't. I mean, here's an example. Let's take the little trip abroad that President Joe is currently on. He had the G7 meeting, and then NATO, and now I guess it's today or tomorrow he's going to meet with Putin. And it just feels like we are just sort of back to normal. Yeah, that's just news. Everybody at the G7 said, welcome back. America is back. And we're hearing things that we normally hear from U.S. presidents, and it's all so familiar, or familiar, as some people say. And some people take a great deal of comfort in this. It just all feels so normal. Remember how it used to be? It's just the news, and I don't have to worry about it. There's no big existential threat hanging over us. I can get back to just being a person and not really caring about much of anything. Just love my family and try to do a good job at work. Just be a good person. There's such comfort in that, isn't there? Well, at the risk of being that guy, the pandemic is not over by any stretch of the imagination. It's raging in different parts of the world. Variants are scary. And so we really don't know how seriously COVID could strike again, especially when fewer than half of Americans are fully vaccinated. And it's beginning to look like that's just going to be it. If anybody who wants to be vaccinated is already vaccinated. I haven't seen the numbers. Have you seen the numbers? How many people are getting vaccinated every day? Anybody? Is it still even happening? We've gone down to such a trickle that it's barely noticeable. I went out to the Brewers game over the weekend. Went out to a Brewers game. They're going to full capacity on June 25th, I believe the date is. So not full capacity. I think they're at half capacity. It was about 20,000 people. Not a single mask in the entire place. And the American Family Field, formerly known as Miller Park, where the Brewers play. I myself call it Euchre Field, named after the great Bob Euchre, because I'll call it what I want. You're not the boss of me. Anyway, it's got a retractable roof, whatever you call it. And the roof was closed because there was a rain in the forecast. As it turned out, it never did rain. It was kind of a shame that the roof was closed. But the point is, the roof was closed. We were indoors. I was indoors with 20,000 people plus not a single mask, knowing full well that the rate of Wisconsinites fully vaccinated is less than 50%. I think it's 43, 4, 5, something like that. So you got to know that at least half of the people in that room were not vaccinated, none of them wearing a damn mask. Now, I've been vaccinated. I feel relatively safe. There's no 100% anything, but the chances of me catching it were a slim to none, so I'm not being a scaredy cat. But I'm thinking about all these people who are not vaccinated, mingling with other people who are not vaccinated, and how I really fear what might happen in the coming months. Maybe we'll get through this summer okay, I don't know. But late summer into fall, I don't know what's going to happen in the U.S. or in the world. And the worldwide vaccination rates aren't anywhere near what the U.S. vaccination rates are. So acting like this thing is over is crazy. Taking general precautions makes perfect sense. And getting vaccinated is the only rational decision you can make, and yet people have just decided not to do it. And I don't know how many more people are going to get vaccinated. I think this is just pretty much it. So that's COVID. There's the bad news on COVID. Again, I don't want to be that guy, but let's be real. Come on. If I'm going to be that guy, let's talk about the climate crisis. My God, what has changed there except it just gets worse day by day by day? But, it's not in the headlines, and we've just gone back to these sort of boring news headlines that half of us pay no attention to. Oh, yeah, there's the president. He's over at the G7 summit. Oh, he's at the NATO. Oh, international relations with China and Russia. Oh, it's just all this boring stuff that goes in one ear and out the other. We got these talking heads doing their regular talking head little game they do. So what happened regarding climate at G7? Nothing. There's nothing. All climate initiatives are being stripped from the infrastructure bill as we speak because Joe Biden has to be this normal president who seeks bipartisanship and is negotiating with the Republicans in Congress. It all just seems so boring and normal. We're going to boring and normal ourselves right into an early grave here. Western nations, the rich nations, the G7, the wealthy nations, whatever you want to call them, failure by any measure, just a 100% dismal, pathetic failure when it comes to climate. There's no real action happening. They'll point to initiatives and goals. Yeah, they're going to be net zero by 2050 or 2060. They've been saying this for quite a while. The Paris Agreement was back in 2015, starting to be a long time ago. We've had to update our goals since then because at the time, if I'm remembering this correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, we can't increase temperature by 2 degrees Celsius. That would mean lots of trouble. We have to keep it below 2. Well, shortly after the 2015 Paris meeting, science stood up and said, hey, guys, you better make that 1.5. We can't increase by 1.5 now. Things have gotten worse. So this is, and we just continue to spew carbon into the air. We talked about it the other day on this program. Breaking records every year, even while these world leaders stand up and make these great pronouncements. So how do you write big headlines every night without just looking like a total killjoy? Hey, man, it's summer. We made it through COVID. We've vanquished the Orange Menace, and we convicted Chauvin. Take a breather, man. Everything's cool. I wish I could. I really want to. Believe me, nobody wants to more than I do. But COVID's still here. Climate crisis is still bearing down on us. And one really outrageously evil, murderous cop gets sent to jail. And we're just going to sit back and say, okay, well, I guess that's over now. When we still have massive systemic racism in every aspect of human life, in housing and employment and policing, education, health, by any measure, by any parameter, institutional racism is thriving. But we just want to put on a happy face. What's the summer hit? Let's all relax. Let's all sit back. While the Republican Party, and just a reminder here, let's do a little reset, shall we? Let's a couple of quick reminders. The United States Republican Party is not a legitimate party. They are a fascist party. They want nothing but power. That's all they're about, 100%. They're anti everything good. They're on the opposite side. They're on the wrong side of history. That's being optimistic. That's hoping that history turns out right. On every issue. The American people want sane gun safety laws. The American people want health care for all. The American people want election reform. The American people want this infrastructure bill as it was originally proposed. For all of my criticism of the Democrats, and I got plenty of criticism for them, they are with the American people right on down the line with just about every single major issue. By large margins. I'm talking about 60, 70, 80, sometimes 90% of the American people in agreement. And yet nothing gets done because the Republican Party is, for some reason, on the opposite side of absolutely everything good and decent in this country. If you're writing a movie villain, that's pretty much what you got here. I can't say that I understand it. They are just so incredibly addicted to their own power. They are so committed and devoted to white supremacy and just out and out racism, sexism, misogyny, and in the end, a concept that you and I have talked about and I still have trouble even comprehending, just power, for power's sake. No other ends. We're talking about ends and means and what justifies what. No, it's just no means, no ends, just power. That's where it begins and ends. I don't understand it, but there's no denying it anymore. So the Republican Party is not a legitimate party. And they are continuing, like a runaway train, to go down that road and off that cliff. If you're an anti-Orange Menace Republican, your days are numbered. Because before you know it, the primaries will be here for the 22 midterms. They're already announcing candidacies. They're already campaigning. And if you're an anti-Orange Menace Republican, you have almost no chance of being reelected, of holding your seat. They're going to beat you. They're just going to come out and get you. Now, politically speaking, that could be good news, depending on where you are, for a couple of Democrats, because as has happened, like Arpaio in Arizona, and there are several other examples. Well, even the two candidates in Georgia. You go too Trumpy, you go too far in the primaries, in the Republican primary, and you purge all so-called moderates. Well, you're leaving an opening in the general for a Democrat to sneak in. It's happened before, and it might happen again. So if you can find an upside, I guess there's that. You can't count on it, but I guess it's possible, depending on what district you're in. So there's that. The Republicans continue. You know how I feel about Joe. The only good thing I can say about Joe is that whole sort of normal vibe. We did, at some point, we had to vanquish the Orange Menace. We had to take a deep breath. And I confess, it felt pretty good for a minute. But even with his occasional big idea, the whole FDR thing and being led by the progressives, I suppose that idea lasted for a couple of minutes longer than we expected. But when you get right down to it, come on. Negotiating with Republicans over the infrastructure bill, spending weeks, months on this, and allowing them to water it down, the increase of the corporate tax rate threatened right now. As the way it looks now, it's not going to happen. The thing has been halved and quartered, the entire bill. So I'm afraid this was all just terribly predictable. My position is clear. I've stated it many times. You got to take these bills to the floor of the Senate, call the vote. Chuck, just call the vote. Don't count votes. Don't calculate this thing politically. Just put exactly what you want into the bill, what you believe is right for the American people. Put it on the floor for an up and down vote and make people vote on it. That's all. Just do it. Force their hand. Force Kyrsten Sinema. Force Joe Manchin. Force the handful of other moderate Democrats. Force the handful of reasonable Republicans, because there's still maybe 5 or 6 of them, while they're still there, because their lives are short. Just force everybody to vote. Put it on the record. And then you win or you lose. But you've won or you've lost on substantial, legitimate legislation, not this ridiculous, watered-down, meaningless, bipartisan crap that probably won't pass anyway, because you know the game. They've made themselves so clear, the Republicans. They don't make any secret about it. You're not going to get their votes anyway. So you're going to go through this big, long, humiliating process of negotiating with the Republicans, have them completely transform your bill into something embarrassing and meaningless, and then you don't even get their votes when it's all said and done. So now you've not only lost this legislation, you can't even run on it. And if by some miracle it passes, it's a shadow of what it ought to be, and you can't run on that either. So Joe and the Dems, just bite the bullet, would you please? Embrace your left flank, write up the bills, put everything you want in there, and vote on them. Just do it. You're on the right side. You're with the American people. Just rely on that. Moscow Mitch, with a reprise of his comment regarding Obama several years ago, when he said they vowed to make him a one-termer, and now 100% of their effort is to stop the Biden administration. And it's not like Joe can't do anything about it. It's not like he's just stuck. The other day in a press conference, he got angry with a questioner, somebody from the press. I forget now what the issue was. Darn it. I have to look back at my notes and find this. Anyway, Joe got really annoyed, showed his temper, did his "come on, man" thing that he does. And, sometimes when he gets angry, his voice gets really quiet. 120 days. It's been 120 days. Come on, man. Give me a break. I'm doing my best. Give me some time. I can't do everything. He was really annoyed. But the point is, we do have to, as we've said from the very beginning, ever since James Clyburn made that big endorsement, and it looked like, okay, well, here we go. It's Joe. Ever since then, we said we got to hold his feet to the fire. It's been our refrain every day since. And we have to hold his feet to the fire. We got to make him do it or he won't do it. He's not powerless. To borrow a headline from David Sirota, stop pretending Biden is a powerless bystander. This goes back to late February of this year. Regarding resistance from the Republicans, and especially regarding Manchin and Sinema and all the trouble they're giving them, a lot of commentators and Joe himself want to say, come on, man, I'm doing my best. No, I don't want to hear that. Sirota says, and I agree, you got to Lyndon Johnson these guys. Let me read a little bit. In 1964, Johnson was trying to pass Medicare, but two conservative Democratic senators threatened to take down the entire legislation over a tax issue. In a story flagged by economist Stephanie Kelton, the New York Times noted that months before that legislation passed, opponents proposed a large and popular increase in Social Security benefits and taxes, which would have made passage of new Medicare taxes almost impossible. At the last minute, Senators George Smathers of Florida and Russell Long of Louisiana, both Democrats, but Medicare opponents, switched and voted to save Medicare. Lyndon told me to, Senator Smathers explained. The pivotal story was recounted in more detail in The Heart of Power by Harvard University's David Blumenthal and Brown University's James Morone. They noted that presidents can play a particularly unique role in these situations, and they warn against presidents who refuse to leverage their offices to push their agendas. Quoting now from that book. Johnson knew there was an indispensable role that only he could play. He could best publicize the idea, build support, jawbone interest groups into line, and organize and lobby the congressional coalition. When reporters asked Senator George Smathers, Democrat Florida, why he had switched his vote and salvaged the administration's Medicare proposal in 1964, he responded simply, Lyndon told me to. Presidents win complicated reforms by doing what the office of the presidency is uniquely designed for, publicizing and persuading. There is, of course, a danger at the other extreme, that of the disengaged executive. The president chooses his analysts, gives them directions, and decides when the debate is over. The staff always knows when the boss has lost interest, and the issue, no matter how well staffed, is probably doomed. Yeah, I think Joe, so far, I think he's kind of trying to have it both ways. He talks big, he talks tough, he talks FDR, and everybody coos and oohs and ahs, all the lefties and the Democrats and the media pundits. Oh, look at Joe. Look how forceful he's being. But then in the very next breath, he'll get annoyed with that questioner from the press about something he's not doing. Well, give me a break, man. I'm doing my best. And then he gets back on his bipartisan horse and insists on negotiating with the Republicans. And when that doesn't work, he just puts together a new working group. And now Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin basically represent the Democratic Party in their negotiations with the Republicans. What kind of an upside-down world are we living in right now? And it's because Joe Biden, for all of his nice guy qualities, isn't the man for the job. He never was. He was the breather in chief, as in take a breather, everybody. The Orange Menace is gone. Thank God. Uncle Joe is in the hot seat. Let's all take a breath. Man, that honeymoon was over in 5 minutes. Joe is not doing the job, and it's not for lack of power, as David Sirota points out, and I agree. Use the power of the presidency. You're the boss of the party. Tell the Democrats what they're doing, make them do it, and if they give you any trouble, you get right in their face, you tell them what's what, you take those votes to the floor, make them vote on it, and you do all of this loudly from your bully pulpit. Yeah, I have no interest in being happily normal. I have no interest in just sitting back passively and thinking, oh, what a terrible year we've just been through. Let's all take a breather and we can not pay attention to the news for a while and, it's in good hands. Everything will work out. No. Nothing's going to work out. Nothing's just going to work out. Climate crisis isn't going to work out. Institutional racism isn't going to work out. Police brutality isn't just going to work itself out. Immigration reform, the southern border, no matter how much Kamala Harris nervously laughs about it, is not going to just work itself out. No, I've already had it. I've just already had it. Lefties, push, and push some more. Joe, use the power of your office to make things happen, and let's get this done. And lefties, now I'm talking to my lefties. Start right now. Get your candidates together for 22. You got to challenge every moderate, whatever it takes. You got to push and pull and drag this Congress into the 21st century and into some semblance of basic global centrism, which on the American political spectrum is way further left than we currently sit. We got to pull America left, and left some more. We got to push and pull Joe to use the power of his office, and we got to get shit done. Yeah, the headlines are soft. They're muffled in our ears. All we can hear is the beginning strains of whatever the next summer hit will be. I know it's been a tough year, but we can't sleep on this, you guys. We can't. All right. There it is. That's the log. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.